Have you ever felt an urge, so sudden it startled you, to bite your nails, to slam a door, to reach for something you shouldn't? Hold that feeling. Because what happened in a grocery store in suburban Chicago wasn't madness. It was that same impulse, amplified. The man in the beige coat, later identified as Michael Pereira, 34, software engineer, approached the raw beef section at 9:42 p.m. His eyes were calm, almost reverent, scanning the neatly stacked packages. Without hesitation, he lifted a tray and bit directly into the raw meat. The sound of wet, deliberate tearing cut through the sterile hum of the freezers. Other shoppers froze, some stared in disbelief, but no one intervened. Clara Martinez, buying chicken breasts, watched her own hand freeze mid-reach. She didn't scream. She didn't move. Her cart stayed where it was as she backed toward the exit, eyes locked on Michael's serene expression. Her heartbeat thudded as the reality of the act registered. Michael swallowed, licked the raw juices from his fingers, and closed his eyes in something beyond satisfaction, something closer to relief. This calm, precise enjoyment will echo in memory, a breadcrumb for what comes next. Scientists would later name this moment Patient Zero of the Sapiens-Toxica outbreak, a virus that rewires craving centers, nudging desire toward the primal, toward the raw. What begins as subtle preference becomes undeniable compulsion. Remember the man in aisle 7. His calm satisfaction is the first breadcrumb in a chain that will ripple far beyond this one store, beyond this one city. Have you ever felt a craving so strong it overrode logic? The urge to slam a door, to run, to reach for something you shouldn't, but it felt correct anyway. Hold that paradox. That's where Sapiens-Toxica lives. It doesn't create new desires. It makes foreign impulses feel native. In a laboratory outside Chicago, researchers open a sample freezer. The hollow click echoes through the sterile room. The scent of the viral culture is faintly metallic, like pennies dissolved in ice water. Scientists examining the samples would hypothesize a mechanism, something like mirror neurons, but for appetite, where your brain simulates others' consumption patterns, amplifying desire beyond normal bounds. This mechanism operates quietly, moving through impulse centers without overt force. A vegetarian of 15 years orders a rare steak. A kosher man pauses at a butcher counter. These aren't lapses. They're evidence that Sapiens-Toxica rewires instinct, making foreign impulses feel natural. The comparison to cordyceps fungus, which hijacks our behavior, isn't metaphor. It's parallel evolution. Organisms rewriting host desire as a survival strategy. Only later would the pattern be traced back to Michael Pereira, back to aisle 7, back to that moment of calm satisfaction. He smiled after swallowing. That wasn't satisfaction. That was permission granted. The virus didn't force him. It didn't need to. It doesn't make you want meat. It borrows your will. And once borrowed, will becomes choice. At least, that's what it feels like. What if losing control felt better than resisting it? Hold that question. Most people assume control equals safety. But what if your brain rewarded surrender instead? That is the quiet, terrifying gift of Sapiens-Toxica. Recovered patient diaries reveal a pattern that defies conventional horror. One journal, Identity Withheld, reads, "I stopped preparing my meals. The knife sat untouched. My body moved before I thought. And for the first time in years, the noise inside me stopped. I felt warmth spreading behind my ribs. My breathing slowed to a meditative rhythm. The act itself became a relief." Another journal, similarly redacted, notes, "The urge surged like electricity. Fear should have accompanied it, but it didn't. I felt calm, almost joyous. The act itself became effortless, satisfying." The behavioral parallel is striking. Consider cordyceps fungus. It compels ants to climb leaves and latch before death. The host doesn't fight, it obeys. Sapiens-Toxica is cordyceps for humans. Evolution discovering the same exploit in different species. The calm compliance is eerily similar. This is a mere compulsion. It's rewarded compulsion. The virus doesn't just override resistance. It makes resistance feel wrong. Each act of surrender releases dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. The brain treats obedience as achievement. The external horror, the blood, the aghast witnesses, is offset by this internal euphoria. Victims aren't monsters. They are satisfied participants in their own hijacking. Euphoria mass violation. A lifelong vegetarian doesn't become a meat eater. She becomes someone who always wanted to eat meat, but was suppressing it. The virus quietly rewrites history alongside desire, embedding calm acceptance where panic might have been expected. They don't scream, they settle. Deep in the Siberian permafrost, a team of miners uncovered an ancient ice vein. Crystal clear and pristine, it trapped remnants of a prehistoric organism, perfectly preserved. The lead miner tapped at the surface, breaking a small shard. The ice cracked with a sound like glass chimes. Beautiful, delicate, ancient. Curiosity rippled through the crew. Specimens were collected carefully, sealed in transport containers, and flown to research labs for analysis. Back in controlled lab environments, initial tests revealed viral particles that defied contemporary classification. Dr. Voss, leading the virology team, noted their unusual morphology and potential for behavioral influence. While excitement buzzed over the paleontological significance, the latent threat remained dormant, waiting in frozen tissue. 3 weeks later, the miners returned home, resuming normal routines. Subtle compulsions began to surface. One miner wrote in his diary, "I found myself at the meat counter, staring. I don't eat red meat, haven't in years. But my hand reached for the package before I could think. It felt right, but unfamiliar." The incubation period masked the onset, allowing the virus to seed unnoticed among family and colleagues. The situation escalated dramatically during a cruise taken by one researcher. Crew members lost control of the situation. Passengers abandoned dining protocols entirely. One woman refused cooked meals entirely. Another insisted on handling raw ingredients. The ship's medical bay overflowed. What began as curiosity became compulsion, then chaos. The vessel became a floating microcosm of behavioral contagion, an uncontrolled laboratory of human action. By the time epidemiologists traced the outbreak pattern back to Siberia, the miners' departure had already seeded multiple nodes of infection. The silent spread rendered early containment impossible. The human hosts were unwitting participants in a chain they didn't perceive. The miners went home 3 weeks before anyone knew. Stop this video. Go to your kitchen. Open the fridge. One there has never been cooked. That raw chicken. Those eggs. The steak you plan for dinner. That pause. That hesitation. This is how unnoticed contagion spreads. In a Singapore wet market, health officials issue bland food safety advisories. Cameras confiscated. One journalist detained. Newsroom stings punctuate the reports. Stalls, press conferences, repeating footage, rapid cuts. A vendor leans close, whispers they're acting strange. All of them. But officials say ignore it. U.S. Midwest slaughterhouse. Production slows. Workers develop inexplicable urges. Management attributes it to stress. Supervisors whisper, masked symptoms. Conveyor belts clank in eerie silence. Supermarkets face shortages, not from illness, but compulsion. Journalists rebuffed. Internal memos, stress, confidentiality. Behavioral anomalies coded as workplace stress. Europe, research facility. Lab claims containment protocols effective. Local residents report family members rearranging groceries obsessively, skipping cooked meals, craving raw ingredients. Officials insist the breach is contained. Local behaviors suggest otherwise. 3 outbreaks, 1 pattern, and nobody is willing to name it. If a dormant code could lower our resistance threshold, what would it look like in you? Sapiens-Toxica merely exposed what was already latent. The raw instincts of humanity, primal appetite, the evolutionary advantage that kept our ancestors alive when cooked food wasn't guaranteed. The compulsion for immediate gratification. The subtle, irresistible pull toward sugar, fat, and unprocessed protein. Civilization's thin veneer always existed, but this code never left. Look at our diets today. Processed meats, endless snacks, sugar spikes, dopamine cycles. All behaviors we rationalize as choice, comfort, or stress relief. These cravings aren't anomalies. They're echoes of the same instinct Michael Pereira demonstrated. The virus didn't awaken new urges. It revealed the old ones we've long buried. Open your fridge. That pause before you cook. That desire for the raw, the rare, the indulgent. That hesitation is the code speaking. Not virus as invader, but instinct as inheritance. The man in aisle 7? Calm, deliberate, smiling as he selects his forbidden cut. He wasn't infected. He wasn't hallucinating. He was honest. Maybe the outbreak never truly spread. Maybe it never needed to. It only reminded us that the primal code still hums beneath our daily routines, our processed meals, our cravings for the forbidden. That man wasn't infected. He was honest.